on to our public councillor workshop. 10 till 10:30, NLTP approved funding, or more importantly, or to the point, non-approved funding. Yue, welcome along, Murray, to the meeting. Yue, thank you for all the info that you've been sharing with us over the last 2 or 3 weeks since the decision was made and shared with us. It was really helpful for informing councillors and then also helping our community understand some of the impact as well. Today is an opportunity to unpack what that decision making looks like, what that might mean for our long-term plan and its flow-on effects to community outcomes. So Yue and Murray, I'll hand over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Sam. So we'll very shortly hand over to Yue, but I just want to acknowledge all the work that Yue has done, and we've also got other members of the council here from the operations team and also our strategic friends down in growth and development. So Yue, I'll pass to you to run us through the work you've provided, and then we'll go into questions and a workshop after that.
Thank you. And I just think for the context of today's discussion, part of this is making sure that it's made available to the public. So this is a public briefing, and so rather than expecting that everybody who has read and understands everything in the papers that are here, if you just take us through some of the decisions and their impacts in a method, in a standard way, so that anyone listening, or to make it easy for us to explain to the community what's going on using your language today would be helpful too. Thanks.
Thank you. First of all, it's not just me, it's a team effort including the capital improvement team headed by Kamal and also Andrew Maisie and the operational delivery team as well. So it's a joint effort in preparing this briefing papers. So, kia ora, councillors. Let me give you a brief overview of our LTP funding and how it would impact our LTP transportation program. So the transportation program in the LTP consists of 2 major parts. So first is our improvement program. Second is our continuous program. The continuous program consists of our maintenance, operational renewal activities, and also road safety promotion. So operations and the renewal activities is the lion's share of that continuous program. And for improvements, we divide them into major improvement projects. Those are $2 million or above. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does. So another part is the low-cost, low-risk program. So those are below $2 million each piece. So to give you an overall understanding of the size of our program in the LTP, roughly we're looking at $28 million per year for maintenance, operations, renewals, and road safety promotion. And also we proposed $35 million per year on average for improvements. Then for NLTP funding request, we submit almost all of the MOR and RSP activities, so almost all of the continuous program for co-funding. So if approved, those would be eligible for 51% subsidy from NZTA. On the other hand, for the improvements that includes major projects and low-cost, low-risk projects, we submit about half for NLTP funding, and another half, it is still programmed for full council funding for delivery. So that's the big picture. And the NLTP process and the LTP process is happening at the same time, and it's unfortunate. So we didn't get the decisions of NLTP before we proceed with our LTP budget request. So that's the need for this briefing, because we need to deal with the information we just received from the NLTP. So the information we received from NLTP was delivered to us in its final form on the 3rd of September. And I have sent you an email regarding how disappointed we are regarding those capital project allocation. On the other hand, we got early indication and later confirmation through that September the 3rd letter, as well on our MOR funding. Overall, we are quite happy with the MOR funding. So there's a contrast, MOR versus improvements. I know within our operational delivery team, there's still concerns regarding inadequate funding on the footpath and the cycle path renewals, and also on road safety promotion. Those are relatively smaller in size compared to our big shortfall in major capital project and also in low cost, low risk improvement projects. So today I'm going to explain the numbers, and we're here also to explain the estimated impacts, and also we try to get your directions on prioritization. So what I will do now is just very briefly go through these two briefing papers, explaining the structure of these two briefing papers. So the first one showing on the screen now is our continuous program. As mentioned, this is the part we are relatively happier with. Section 3 talks about the history and the background. Oh, by the way, these two briefing papers are structured in the way of a council report that is supposed to be submitted for a follow-up council meeting with options for you to consider and to approve one of them. On the history and background, we talked about the LTP process, and the first table you see here is the allocation under broad categories. So in this NLTP program, there are some changes regarding how maintenance activities are allocated under different activity classes or under different names. For example, under this new government, the activity class of pothole prevention was introduced, but it is just a reclassification of a lot of the maintenance and the renewal activities already in the previous LTPs. It's just a reclassification of the activities. So as you can see, pothole prevention is mostly about maintenance and renewals, and then there's another part about our operations. And then there are relatively smaller parts regarding bridge and the structural renewals and walking and cycling. So bridge and the structural renewals for this NLTP, we put in the request for the White Cliffs Bridge. So overall, as you can see, we are very well funded for pothole prevention and reasonably well funded for operations. the bridge, the bridge funding, they allocated $3 million out of the $4 million we requested. We're not going to build 3/4 of a bridge. What they indicated is that we will have additional opportunities to request funding for bridge when we have more information and more certainty about the cost. So this is an exception. On other categories, we won't have much of an opportunity to request additional funding. So the disappointment here is apparently walking and cycling, and this is aligned with the government's priority.
Okay.
The second table listed individual work categories, individual work categories under the activity classes. What we put up as a proposal or as a starting point for discussion is that Council keeps its committed allocation of budget, that is Council's co-share, included in the LTP to combine that with the subsidies we got from NZTA to fund Council's transportation activities during the 24 to 27 NLTP period. So these proposals are based on that assumption. And so as you can see in this table, what we put in there, so the second column is 24 to 27 budget in the LTP, and the third column is what is confirmed from NZTA, how much subsidy we're going to get regarding each work category. And then the fourth column is our committed local share. That is essentially 49% of the second column. The fifth column is the third and fourth combined together. That gives us our revised budget. And the last column shows you the percentage of the revised budget as percentage of the LTP budget. As you can see, the pothole prevention activity class is very well covered. Operations is reasonable. And another point I want to make regarding this maintenance operations renewal budget is that we are not getting 100% of what we requested, but it is significant step up from the previous 3 years. So overall, we have a 55% increase over the previous 3 years at the time of NLTP funding approval. So, so that's why we say we're absolutely happy regarding the maintenance operations renewals. And nevertheless, there are operational impacts because of certain shortfalls that we are expecting compared to what we proposed in the LTP budget. So those impacts were discussed in section 5 of this report. Yeah. So the options they are listed in section 6. Those would be essentially 3 options. The first is that we commit the local share and combine that with the NZTA subsidy. The second is that we reduce our program to what NZTA agrees to fund, And the third is for council to fully fund all our proposed activities regardless of NZTA subsidy. So apparently, option one is the one that would have minimum impact on our LTP budget. So we don't have to do as much rejuggling as with other area, as other options. The second report is on the improvement program. It is structured similarly. So the table here shows you the different categories that we requested funding for and the outcomes for those funding. And essentially, we requested $58 million in new improvements, including major and low cost, low risk. And we were expecting close to $30 million in subsidy regarding those. And we got two major projects approved. The project cost is about $6 million. Therefore, we are expecting $3 million in subsidy. That leads to a $27 million shortfall in an LTP subsidy that we need to plan for. So considering the overall impacts of that $27 million shortfall, so the overall size, if we say the improvement projects over the 3 years, $35 million per year, that's $105 million. That includes some carry forwards from the 23-24 period. Now we need to reduce that program to, say, probably to $75 million. Yeah. The tables under section 3.5, they listed in detail what was requested, what are the projects requested under those categories. There are 9 major projects, and 2 of them are approved. They are listed there as probable. That means NZTA is very likely to fund those projects once we go through the formal process of submitting the business cases. So it's the same for everyone. So for new projects, so they are either listed as probable or possible. Probable is likely to get funded. Possible is mostly unlikely. So the 2 projects that got approval are the 2 related to our Rolleston State Highway 1 access package. So, there is a NZTA work program on the Rolleston State Highway 1 access that includes the Downs Crossing roundabout and also the Rolleston Drive flyover. That's an NZTA project, formally programmed under the NZ Up initiative. Now it has been included in something called Roads of Regional Significance, and the government has funded that project. So our coordinating projects in Southern District, there are several of them, and 2 of them gets funded in this cycle. On the next page, section 3.9, those are the projects not proposed for NLTP co-funding. So those are the projects that would be solely funded by council funds. A lot of them, for example, are related to the Lincoln Town Center and other improvement in the townships. Similarly, the options are discussed in section 4, and the operational impacts are discussed in section 5 and section 6, because at this time we really are at the beginning stage of doing the reprioritization. So the operational impacts, they're really brief over here. There are 2 pages of attachments at section 8. Those are the proposals from staff on what projects to keep and what projects to defer for this 3-year period. So we have evaluated the projects according to their priority, their alignment with other projects, and essentially what we found is that at the end, what is not being proposed to go ahead within the 3-year period, probably a lot of those are the intersection improvements, because they are relatively isolated rather than a corridor-wide impact. So that does has its implications on safety, although we're proposing that we should do intermediate short-term fixes to control its impact. On the last page over here is the reprioritized improvement program for those projects that we did not request an LTP co-funding for. And an important addition to that list is the projects related to Borderlands Drive. Those are related to the Help It emergency campus development, and those projects would add up to $4.5 million. So in order to minimize its impact on our budget, we're proposing that we defer the projects on Moore Street extension and also the Moore Street roundabouts that are close to the school. So this gives you the overview of our NLTP funding situation and also the projects that are under consideration. So I'll conclude my presentation, and we'll be happy to answer your questions as a team.
Very good. Thank you for that. I just wonder if we start at the back end of that presentation, and it's the attachments, which has the list of the revised program as you're suggesting we look at it, because I think that's a good place for us to start. I think if we'd known the funding that we weren't going to receive from NZTA at the beginning of the process, we would have had a different order of things and not necessarily fully funded everything that we proposed in the way that we did through our long-term plan. So just if it's, I think it's 2 slides above the one you've got on screen there, but you're suggesting that, or staff are suggesting that the Duns Crossing Road, Burnham School Road traffic signals could still go ahead and we would fully fund those to make that happen. The Hoskins Road widening stage 1 would be fully funded by us and still happen. The Springs Hamptons Road roundabout would be fully funded by us and still happen. The Gerald Street Vernon Drive traffic signals again would be fully funded by us and still happen. the Goulds and Ellesmere Junction road safety upgrade would occur. The Levi Road widening would occur, and the Whedon's Ross Road seal widening would occur. There's a couple of other projects in there I might have missed, but there's going through thinking of the things that we've heard a lot from our community about particularly needing and wanting, and also aligning the work that staff are doing in other areas such as the Lincoln Town Centre upgrade. It makes sense for those projects to go ahead. So thank you for, I think, considering the importance of each of the projects and coming back to us with staff's recommendations on that. And I think that last table is really, really helpful for us. And you said at the beginning that we had a 55% lift in the maintenance and renewals budget, and that's great that we've received that. And the balance is that in a growing district, when the government is asking councils across the country to build more houses and provide for communities, building more homes puts more traffic on streets, which increases congestion at intersections and safety issues at intersections. And we need to see government contributions to our roading improvements and those capital programs through growth as well. And I met with the Wakatahi NZTA board on Monday for LGNZ with Neil Holdham, who's the chair of the LGNZ Transportation Advisory Group, and this was raised with them around the need for that, the timing issues that councils across the country have felt in the misalignment of decision making, and how unfortunate that is. And it's not just this year with this government, it happened 6 years ago as well. I remember sitting here thinking the same thing when a new government decided to change direction, and our LTP had changed some things too. So central government, local government coming together on roading funding is really important. Sharon?
Yep, thank you, Sam. Murray, I was just wondering to assist councillors as part of the workshop to give some guidance about what this means in terms of LTP amendment or not, as the case may be, and implications for annual plan. It's handy to know that up front as they get into debate and discussions.
Perfect. So it is a rather complicated matter, as it turns out, but there's probably some reasonably clear guidance, and then it gets a wee bit blurry after that. So if council was of the mind to fund the difference from Wakatahi's reduction in costs, that would likely require an LTP amendment because it's rate funded that we'll be seeking that funding from. Likewise, if council was to remove funding from it, and so not actually put the funding investment in that we proposed in the long-term plan, that would also likely require an LTP amendment.
Sorry, Murray, do you mean LTP or annual plan?
LTP. So we don't want to be doing those things. That's a lot more work. So that's the. I suppose there's the do nothing, no changes to any documentation. There's potentially changes to the annual plan, and there's potential changes to the long-term plan. And in that order, we want to try and keep things. So we don't want to do any changes, but if we have to, let's make an annual plan change. And what we don't want to do is a long-term plan change. It's just a cumulative increase in complexity. So if we were to add a lot more budget in to offset Wakatahi's lack of funding, that would require an LTP amendment. And likewise, the other end, if we were to pull funding out, that would also be the same. I think the logic that we're saying is that we've got a 10-year program, and the funding for the first 3 years hasn't come through, and so it's a prioritisation and alignment of those projects over multiple years. So we will keep those projects in the long-term plan, but we'll push them out beyond year 3. So there'll be a year 4, 5, 6, and we'll try and apply for additional funding in those periods, next round of funding. As time goes on, there's ability to apply for funding. Sometimes there's special funds that come up, and that's another way we could backfill some of this funding, hopefully in the future. So what staff have done is they've gone through and prioritised the projects which we think absolutely have to happen, and that's where we're saying that our current funding we've allocated should be reapportioned to, if that makes sense. One thing I will mention as well is that the LTP was very clear, particularly in a number of instances, but clear across the whole lot, is that a number of our projects were subject to Wakatahi funding. And if that funding wasn't to occur, then those projects would be withdrawn. And so that has put us in a lot stronger position, because we can say we applied for the funding. The funding wasn't received, and that's why these projects aren't coming. So there's no surprises. The LGP has in fact anticipated those changes.
So Murray, this change, or any changes here, if we were just to use the same money that we've already said we're going to rate for, but apply it to different projects, we don't necessarily trigger the need for an annual plan. We just change our comms to the community about the order of projects that we will be delivering.
That's correct. Yep. Yeah. So once we've been through this workshop and we finalise our proposal, then we'll run that through legal review again, just to make sure that the advice we're giving you now withstands that. But that's our understanding, correct?
Thank you. And councillors, the reason that that's significant is we're not deciding today whether or not we do an annual plan, but the cost and the distraction for an annual plan at the same time as thinking about changes in water, as well as delivering business as usual and our expectations that staff capital spend will meet what we have told our community. An annual plan is a distraction from those things. So we want to make sure we keep our avenues open where we can, to not force ourselves into a corner on that. We can still make the decision to do an annual plan if that's your choice later in this year, but we don't want to back ourselves into a corner early on it. I don't know who's got grants. Might be your way down the end. So Phil is next.
No, Mike, thanks for putting those priorities together. It's good to see it in the black and white that it is. Someone's got to make a comment about how disappointing it is that Waka Kotahi has done this funding. I know we're in a public forum, but like Waka Kotahi has put us in a terrible position where we now need to determine which of our safety projects we're going to prioritise. You know, I look at things like Selwyn and Springston Road roundabout, which we say we've prioritised Duns Crossing, Burnham School Road traffic signals over that, and it makes sense, but it means that there's we're acknowledging that there's an unsafe area. We just need to be ready to jump, because when people die at these intersections or are seriously hurt at these intersections, the decisions that we had to fix them were there. And the Transport Agency is putting us in a terrible position of now having identified the risk, but not being able to do anything about it. And it actually sickens me to think that we've been left with this. So I guess the hardest thing for you guys is going to be to keep the eye on these risk elements, and to keep reporting back to us as risk elements increase. I mean, I commend you for what you've done here, and I think all the things you've done here is correct. So when it comes back in a document, I'll be supporting what you've got here. But I just wanted to make that statement about it. I think that it's what Waka Kotahi Transport Agency is doing is wrong. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Nicole.
I'm following on from Phil's comment. I mean, this is not... Waka Kotahi, though, does have a fixed amount of money that it's given by the government. So I think that the onus actually has to go back to the government of the day that we've got. And this is the only amount of funding that they are providing, and it is to specific programs. And it is promoting, essentially, so that we'll see more traffic on our roads, which is it's a complete swing from what we have just had. And I hope going forward we won't have these big swings between governments as we've been having. It's quite a nightmare for us to try and plan on what we want to do. What I'm concerned about is there's some little things that make a big difference. Walking and cycling projects, and as Phil's already mentioned, road safety promotion. So they are not big budgets, but they actually do make a huge amount of difference. Walking and cycling, if we looked at cost-benefit analysis and actually factored into health, that would be way up. It is like any sort of benefit, a cost-benefit ratio that comes out, things like this, which are getting people active, make a big difference across the board, and the government should be looking at this, because then it's keeping people out of hospitals. It is meaning that there's less traffic on our roads, less damage on our roads. We don't need to keep making wider roads, which we are. I mean, this government is trying to do more motorways to get more people moving fast, which is an ironic situation to be in. But so the whole thinking's wrong, and it's actually there is so much evidence out there that this is the wrong way to be going. I was listening to Simon Kingham, who was the Ministry of Transport science advisor for the last term. He's no longer in this position, and was talking about how Australia had looked to us on the road safety program that we'd had and are starting to implement this sort of thing. And we're changing what we're doing. We're actually going backwards in that space. And as Phil's already said, it's going to cause an issue in a number of potentially people that are harmed. So I'm going to stop my rant, but it's I just don't agree with what is being put before. It's not you guys, but it's the way this is all being done. The policy, and this is where that we look at, policy needs to be backed by evidence, and I can't see the evidence at all that's been produced on why this new program is being put in and why it is going forward going to be like this. But we have to take the funding that we are given and work with it. So thank you for you guys trying to do what you can with what we've got. I just have one question with the report. So in the back where we talk about views of those affected in consultation, so climate change considerations. And so it's page 18 of the diligent, and it says there are no significant climate change considerations in relation to the decision given the funding window in relation to this report is 3 years. I think there are a number of climate change considerations we could put in this, which I've already mentioned. I mean, the whole fact of getting more traffic on our roads, more congestion, these sorts of things, they have a flow-on effect to directly this, and to not have funding walking and cycling, which has a benefit in the other way. I think these are things that we could actually put more into this at the end of this report. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Councillor. We can definitely elaborate on that. So we can mention those things. Just to be clear, though, this is for 3 years funding, and I suppose the expectation is that in the subsequent years, 4 to 10, that these projects would continue. That is our hope. But we can further expand on that climate change section.
Thank you.
Shane.
Kia ora, Sam. Tēnā rā tātou katoa. Mihi ana kia tātou. Kei te mihi te rangatiratanga. Te mana whenua, koro matua, tumu whakahaere, kai mahi, kai kaunihera, rohe wai kirikiri, tēnā rā tātou katoa. UA and team, thank you very much for putting this report together and the complexity of the work that you've had to undertake. Yourself and all of your team, and what I've seen is a good rationalisation, given the direction of a government that was elected on these specific items to invest into core infrastructure. So I'm sure all the contractors and engineers were really happy about this. We've got a 55% increase in our infrastructure that provides good infrastructure for our residents and everybody else coming into the area for a long time to come. Walking and cycling, it doesn't stop anybody from walking and cycling. You can still get out there and walk and cycle and still enjoy your well-being. I'm happy with the direction that's been given, the reprioritisation. We haven't had the rug completely pulled out from underneath it. It's a reduction in some of these other areas in funding, including schools and risk and education. And I just wanted to say thank you to Sam Sharland and her team for the massive transport education they've been doing out at the schools in Southbridge. It's an incredible program, and it's well received by all of the schools. So maybe it's something that the government should 100% fund in those particular areas in education and risk prevention. I see development contributions you've got here mentioned in 5.6, and I'm just interested to see where that fits in Duns Crossing and that sort of area. If we're delaying it, then potentially we're at risk of restricting potential funding. Are we at a good limit on some of those, on that development contribution? Sorry, I've just moving through that pad, what Sam was talking about. I'm pretty comfortable with it overall. And if it means that what the schedule that you've got here doesn't affect the current LTP, and that we continue to carry on as the business as usual with more funding for our critical core infrastructure, then I'm happy with that direction. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to answer that question about DCs, our DC policy outlines the key projects which are to be funded, and the DCs are based off that. Our proposal is not that these projects are removed off the program, but they are deferred into later years of the long-term plan, so we can carry on receiving that.
I just want to thank those who have put this report together, because this has been really well done and it's an easy read for us to be able to ascertain all the information in this document. So well done on that. And I think also that you've done the best with what you can with the proposals and the changes and outlining and the prioritisation. Just one quick question. On our page 5 in Diligent, you've got level crossing warning devices. I actually just wanted to ask what encompasses a level crossing warning device, because we've obviously had a lot from the public about the flashing lights and things, and Phil Dean mentioned before the dangers that we have with our intersections and so on. So yeah, just interested. It's quite a small, really small budget compared to everything else. So I'm just wondering what you can get out for that small budget, and whether there's any room for that to grow as you push the projects further out.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing up this topic. So level crossing warning devices, just the warning devices. So it's relatively small program, and related to level crossing, we actually right before this meeting, we have a 9 to 10 o'clock meeting with Kiwi Rail to coordinate our proposed maintenance activities and improvement activities for level crossings in the districts. Those they're actually seeking a agreement with the council for council to fund 50% of those level crossing upgrades. So that's going to have a bigger financial impacts that we need to discuss further with the council.
Okay, so the level crossing, that's to do with the railway tracks, and it's not to do with intersections.
Railway tracks.
Thanks for the report. I'm on page 19 of Diligent, and we've got major projects. And what I'm looking at is 2 sets of traffic signals, one for Burnham School Road at 4 million, and then one for Gerald Street, Vernon Drive at 3.5 million. And then when I look at all the roundabouts that are proposed, Springs and Hamptons roundabout, that's 5 million, Duns Crossing Road roundabout 6 million. My question is, why are we not putting in the cheaper option of traffic lights instead of roundabouts? A, it takes less land, and B, it is a safety issue, but it seems to be a cost-effective one, and I just wonder, why are we not actually putting in more traffic lights now instead of actually putting in roundabouts, which normally get replaced by traffic lights later on?
I'll let Andrew answer this question.
Okay. It's just a big saving.
Thanks for the question, Deborah. Traffic signals are best used and the most efficient in lower speed urban areas. So for instance, like we've been doing at Prebbleton and providing those roundabouts on Shands Road, that's in that sort of more peri-urban rural context, and so they're suited there. In terms of Springs Hamptons, that is the last of those series of 5 intersections to be upgraded, and that is for a roundabout as well. Now, in that situation, it is on the interface between a higher speed rural environment and a slower speed urban one. So in actual fact, having traffic signals there is not a good way to go, because basically you've got to you've got a high speed approach to those compared to what a roundabout can handle in a better way in that regard. In terms of roundabouts, they obviously have issues in terms of taking a reasonable amount of room and can involve property acquisition as well. But I think there's a misconception that traffic signals don't, and they do, but they just have a different requirement for land. Instead of a roundabout being concentrated around the sort of intersection, traffic signals need longer and approach lanes and things like that that do require additional private land to be obtained. And we're going through that very process with the traffic signals at Levi and Lincoln Rolleston, Macefield Drive at the moment, in terms of getting land for that in conjunction with foodstuffs. So it's a matter of making sure that you pick the right response for the right part of the network. And it's worthwhile touching on the fact that the previous Road to Zero program had specific sort of requirements around, again, what intervention was best used in the particular situation. It was funded on.
So can I just ask for clarification if it's in an urban area, or does the roundabout propose for Selwyn, Springston, Rolleston Road, given that the land has been purchased in that particular area for a roundabout, and given that is that more suitable now for traffic lights, given the development that is happening there and the school that's going to be there? Is it more efficient now to have traffic lights at a saving than a roundabout?
Good question. We assess both options, and again, like the example for Springs Hamptons, that roundabout or that intersection is on that urban and rural interface, and so for that reason, the roundabout is a better traffic control device there. You have the issue in terms of within an urban area, traffic signals are better suited to cater for a higher level of pedestrians and cyclists, and in those other situations, not as much. But certainly for that particular intersection, it's got some very interesting geometrics around sort of the offset of the 2 legs of Selwyn Road, the bends on the approaches and things like that. So a roundabout can cater for those sort of alignments much easier than traffic signals can, which has to have everything lined up perpendicular and very sort of organised on that basis. So it's a practical way of dealing with an intersection of a fairly sort of non-standard alignment.
And sorry, my other question, I guess, is around the Waimakariri Gorge Road bridge. I presume it's the bridge guard rail. Is it?
Yes.
No or yes?
Yes. So it's not the bridge guardrail, it's the guardrail on the road approaching the bridge.
Okay. It's just that we are in a workshop environment, but it has been brought to my attention that some agricultural contractors are struggling now because of the realignment of the design of the bridge to get their agricultural implements across the gorge bridge. That's the design of the rails. Okay. So I just want to bring that.
It's not that project.
It's not
so
that project.
We're not going to delve into that project now.
But I'll talk to you afterwards about it. But I just wanted to bring that up because that's what I thought it might have been.
Thanks, Deborah. Sophie.
Kia ora team, thank you very much. Yeah, that email a few weeks ago wasn't much fun looking at those numbers, was it? thank you very much for all your work trying to work out how we make as much happen as possible, because it's not easy. I thank you as well for the explanation about, for re-emphasising that we've got 10 years, even 30 years worth of projects. This is the first 3 years worth of funding we're talking about. Some of it can reapply later. I do worry a bit with that, in the sense that there's always more projects that come on, and we know that there is increasing housing growth in various areas, which means that there will probably be changes in what's needed and where it's needed and everything else. So deferring stuff is always a risk, but I guess we can't get away from that either. I've got a few questions, so I'll try and be concise. It's interesting. One concern I've got is around the NZ Up or RAWS, whatever, the Overbridge project and all that sort of access projects around State Highway 1 near Rolleston, in the sense that the only ones that are funded are to do with iZone, which does align with this government's priorities around economic stuff, but anything that's to do with the townships is kind of like, you guys deal with that. And I'm not sure that we're going to be able to, it'll be interesting, thank you so much for making sure that one of the things that is going to be reprioritised is the Duns Crossing, Burnham School Road traffic lights, because they are essential. But there's some other stuff, like the widening of that road, and even the road widening, which is literally in progress right now, and suddenly it's lost funding. And I'm just worried that there might be something that turns into, oh, well, actually the council's not holding up their end of the deal, and that's going to change how NZTA or the government refers to us as not meeting our obligations, when actually, we were kind of relying on a whole package of stuff that was agreed with them. So I just wanted to voice that, because I know we can't do much about the future and we can't second guess really what they might say, but this was a whole package and we've come out looking worse for wear at the moment. There were definitely some good outcomes in the reprioritisation. I mean, it's good to see most of the Lincoln Town Centre stuff still there, and the Ellesmere widening is there. That's really good. I do stress a bit about the walking and cycling one. I mean, it's only lost in the activity classes one. It's lost around 300k, which is a small amount. That's like 0.5 of the pothole budget. The pothole budget is so massive that we've lost the funding for almost an entire activity class based on 0.5 of the potholes. So I guess one question is there any chance of transferring just a bit of that back into walking and cycling, because it does make a massive difference, and actually improving that, making sure that we actually meet some of those projects actually means that we would live our values better. Like, we talk about climate change, we have a strategy. We talk about accessibility, we have a strategy. We literally had people talking to us a couple of weeks ago about how the fact that they can't walk and cycle as easily as they could do makes a massive difference to their ability to get around to our towns. So for the sake of 300k, 0.5 of a pothole budget, I would love to see some of that rediverted if possible. I'm also a wee bit worried that it looks like, I mean, I could be reading this wrong, it looks like our speed management plan implementation is now down to 0, which is a bit worrying. We've done a speed management plan, so we're just going to leave it on a shelf. I would be interested to know what that means after all the consultation and the time that we spent on that. And obviously I'm, being me, sad to see that the bus stop upgrades are down to 0 as well. And I'm curious as to why on page 21, now I'm not going to say that the Broadlands Drive extension and roundabout are not needed for various things, but I'm curious as to why they've jumped in at 4.5 million right now when we're losing a bunch of stuff that we've had programmed for a long time and was originally on the list. And we haven't actually mentioned this part yet. And it's because that's quite a large sum of money. And I know that it's a good project, but there are actually no bad projects on this. And again, I'm worried that this is another example of a new project that is going to push out old projects that our people have been waiting for. And I'm not necessarily, this is what's going to keep happening. New projects are going to jostle with old projects for priority, and people are going to lose out, and safety is going to lose out. Get it?
Thank you for the questions. I'll answer the questions regarding the public transportation infrastructure and also walking and cycling, and I'll invite others to answer the other two questions. So on the public transportation infrastructure, those are related mostly to bus stop improvements. So we proposed 180K each year in the NLTP funding package, and also that is included as part of the Big Decision 1 in the LTP consultation process. So the community has given us guidance that if we don't get NLTP co-funding, they prefer to defer that program. So fortunately, in the last financial year, we have a significant amount of unspent, low-cost, low-risk, subsidized money on the bus stop category. So in addition to delivering the new bus shelters program for that year, towards the end of last financial year, we purchased about 13 flat pack bus shelters. So we have things in storage, we can still put those in, so that kind of mitigates the problem. On walking and the cycling, so on the improvement side, so we're proposing to the council that we fully fund it. So the council fully funds the program. So basically makes up whatever NZTA does not agree to co-fund. That's on the improvement side. On the maintenance and the renewal side, yes, we do see a major reduction over there. So, well, the way we deal with that is that in the LTP process, there is a $1 million per year budgeted for something called catch-up renewals. So essentially, we have a backlog of renewals over the past 10 years, and the council agreed to allocate $1 million per year over the next 10 years to that catch-up renewals. So the initial intention was to apply most of that to, say, resales and the pavement rehabilitations. Now we have a very well-funded payment rehabilitation resale program. Therefore, it's relatively easy for us to redirect priority within that $1 million to supplement what's currently here. So we're not proposing to make things more complicated. Rather, let's work within that $1 million to make things happen. And for the other two, I guess.
I only wrote the SFP question.
Oh no, there's also the Rolleston Access project, which
I'll let you talk about that, then I'll go to SFP.
yeah, okay. Thanks for your question, Sophie, around the Rolleston Access project. So, as I've probably explained a number of times before, there is a coordination going on between the council and NZTA in regards to the Rolleston Access project, what was referred to as the NZ Up project, now the road of regional significance, if I get that right. And so let me put this in context. In terms of approvals on our approval program, we only got 2 projects approved. Compared to councils around the rest of the country, that's probably 2 more than anybody got approved. So just put it in context in terms of actually we were very lucky to get those 2 approved, and that is directly in regards to needing to coordinate in with the NZTA project, and it's around establishing that southern freight access route. And so, unfortunately, the other 2 components, or one of the other components in terms of the seal widening of 2 Chain Road, as UI said before, was in our low cost, low risk program, and that $20 million program got zero funding. So in some respects, we're lucky. In fact, we got those two projects in. And NZTA, in terms of, there's different, obviously, divisions within NZTA. There's the division that's looking after the implementation of this project. There's the funding investment division. We've been coordinating across both to make sure that everybody is aware of the coordination and the commitment that needs to occur to make both programs work. Unfortunately, we haven't got everything we've asked for, but as I said, in the context of everybody else, that's just the way it works out. And so we had in our long-term plan a program of around $90 million worth of upgrades on those arterials linking to State Highway 1. We'll keep progressing that in terms of next time, in terms of the next funding application round and things like that. But there's things that we just cannot avoid not doing, such as what we're doing now, the Levi Road widening, and what will become the two-chain road widening in conjunction with those two projects. But I also would like to point out that, you know, we're not across the finish line either with those. We still have to produce a business case to justify them for the final funding approval.
Kia ora, councillors. Just in relation to the SNP, if you remember when the setting of speed limits rule was indicated as being changed last December, November, and we were told at that point in time to stop doing an SMP, reduce that back down, and then implement an ISMP, so the interim speed management plan, which addressed all of the school problems that we've got around the district. They have been installed, so we've actually got all the signage and everything that's in there. The funding changes will affect the infrastructure that we had programmed or planned to put in place to support those speed restrictions. So we can put all the speed restrictions there. Hopefully people will adhere to it. The additional stuff, the Kias, the raised tables, everything else is to support that and try and slow it down. And that's where we're going to lose the funding at this moment in time. Don't forget, like Mary said, this is a long-term thing. We're in it for the long game. And there's always an opportunity that some funds may become available further down the line if it gets recognised that someone's not expending their allocation early in the NLTP period. We've experienced that this year. We've had additional funding given to us for renewals, etc. Because no one, well, not no one else, but there was a shortfall, an under expenditure elsewhere. So opportunities are there. We need to look as well. We need to try and achieve those funding requests. The UA will be getting suggested that we push forward with something like that further into the LTP.
In Broadlands Drive, does that help it? No, okay, yeah. Just a comment. Good. Mary, do you have something else you wanted to say?
I was just interested that there's a comment. If we are to enable the emergency services hub, then this project needs to be brought forward, and then to balance the books, another project needs to be pushed out. So that's simply it.
And that was the kind of the point. It's like it's just an example of how new projects come along, and by the time we get to the next one, you know, there'll be more new projects.
Thanks, Sophie. Bob.
Yeah, just with the White Cliffs Bridge, it's underfunded, and if council didn't resolve to put more funding in, what happens to the original funding that we've applied for? Does that carry on, or do we lose it?
If the council does not put in additional money, and if the NZTA subsidy is that much, we cannot go to the market to procurement. So I think there's really not an expectation here that NZTA is not coming up with their part of the share, and also it's not the expectation here that the council is not fund its share.
I think you mentioned before that there's a secondary process to follow, so we need to provide the business case and then confirm that funding. And so through that business case process, we're hopeful that Wakataki will increase that funding to match what's needed.
I suppose the question is, with all of this funding, if we don't actually use the funding for what it's intended, and because we change our mind or anything like that, does it actually go back into their pot?
Yes, it does. So the way NLTP works is that different activity classes, they are ring-fenced. So in this case, for this bridge, it is ring-fenced in that bridge improvement category. So if we don't spend money on this bridge, that approved subsidy goes back to NZTA.
Thank you. Malcolm.
Yeah, Andrew, I was under the impression that roundabouts and traffic lights, there wasn't a great deal of difference in the capital outlay for installation. Is that incorrect?
Well, it always depends on the specific situation.
Of course.
But when we went through that exercise for the Prebbleton roundabouts, particularly on Shands Road, we actually came to the conclusion that there wasn't as much difference as you may think there would be. And again, it comes back to, what the very expensive and difficult part of any big intersection project is the acquisition of private land. And that's where you get those big bumps in costs sometimes in terms of whatever intersection treatment you want to achieve, what land it requires. But as I say, it's horses for courses. In that sort of peri-urban, rural environment, roundabouts are generally the way to go. In that slower speed urban environment where there's more pedestrians and cyclists needing to cross safely, traffic signals are the way to go. But it's a balancing act depending on the role of the road that's involved.
Thank you, Andrew. If you sit at the stop signs that some of these road treatments are being put in to alleviate the issues, you'll find that if you sit there in peak time, over a third of the people don't stop. So it's very hard to drive through a roundabout. It's very easy to drive through a stop sign, and it's very easy to ignore a set of traffic signals. I would much prefer us to have roundabouts for the safety of our residents than stops and traffic lights, which, in my experience in the local area, would just be ignored. I'd like to thank you all for your report and the way that you've tried to cut the cloth. It's a great report. I agree with what you're trying to do. I am very disappointed in the lack of funding. I was at a meeting with Simeon Brown some 6 weeks ago where he was linking expenditure on roading to productivity. We are the fastest growing area in New Zealand. Not being able to move people around our communities, as we've seen in Levi Road in the last few weeks, creates a huge cost to employers because their staff aren't getting there, to employees because they're sitting with their engine running. I am very disappointed that we all pay for our share of the government funding through RUCs and fuel taxes, and we are not getting our share. That's another classic example of the money going to the North Island. Yes, we have got a couple of big projects which I'm very happy to see, but I am very disappointed in the way this government has cut the expenditure, especially when you look at this list in the fastest growing area in the country. And I do think that this list should be put in the paper so the community can see just what we're not getting from this government. Thank you.
Yes, I just had a question because I'm hearing it's bad, but on the other hand, I've heard we received 55% more this time around than we have previously. So it's good. So we didn't get what we asked for, but we got more than we've ever got before. And I too have read the press article that talks about majority of funding going to the North Island and not getting proportionate. But is this a bad news story or good news story?
It's two parts. So on one hand is maintenance operations renewals. That's a good story. On the other hand, improvements, the new things, it's a disappointing story.
And with those improvements, did we get less than before or more than before or no difference?
much less than before. In the previous cycle, we got, for example, we got $7 million in low cost, low risk. On this one, we got zero.
Any concluding comments or for the briefing from staff? Anything else you want to raise with us or highlight? And can we talk about this as a report that will come to council? We'll need to approve the changes in expenditure and timing of products, or is that now our delegations are able to just allow that change to happen?
I think for completeness, we'll bring a formal report to council would be the best way forward.
Yep.
Yeah, so staff appreciate the comments from council today. We will bring back a formal report, recommendations. We'll check off, make sure that conversation about long-term plan amendments or annual plan amendments are well covered. And we'll do what we can to make sure we minimise any impacts on both of those. Andrew was quite keen to make one last quick comment, so I'll pass to him before we close out completely, if that's okay.
Sorry, I will add in though that we will reflect that it does sit under the change with regards to the new delegations to the sea, but it's good business to bring it back to council for the formal.
Yeah, I really appreciate listening to the conversation with the councillors this morning, and I think I would like to, having been on the battle front before with these type of things, the work that's been put in by UI and Murray in terms of getting this information to you is excellent. Just want to make a couple of summary comments. Obviously, we sort of like to level the blame at the NZTA, but remember they are following the direction from the Ministry of Transport, which is following the government's government policy statement on transport. So they are in some ways between a rock and a hard place as well. And as I said, in some respects, we have done reasonably well. As QA has said, we've had a big lift in maintenance. Yes, we've had a drop in the improvements, but that is nationwide. But to put it into another context, the government has approved the continuation of the Wollaston NZ Up project, which is now a road of regional significance. So in that respect, we actually are quite fortunate still in that regard. But I think the main thing is that we need to take away from this is that those, as Nicole mentioned, those sort of small projects, the small wins for walking and cycling, public transport, that's where we're going to feel it the most and where the community is going to feel it the most. So maybe in terms of discussions for future annual plans, LTPs, we perhaps need to focus in more on those and make sure that we can meet some of those obligations to the community and what they're looking for. But I'll just sum up also that, as we all know, we're a high growth council. We've got a huge number of pressures coming on our networks in Wollaston, Lincoln, and in some respects Privilton, but we've just about dealt with that in some respects. So we need to keep our eye on that ball as well. And I think we need to, as a council, have a discussion on how potentially we may need to think about funding these type of large improvements going forward, and perhaps getting to more of a where the benefit falls, or maybe people need to pay a bit more, but we can talk about that later on.
Great, thanks everyone for the contribution to this discussion. Briefing is closed. Thank you.